The telegram arrived on a Tuesday morning in Angels Camp, California, and it changed Natalie Parker's life in the span of 3 sentences. Your father passed. Debts owed. You are payment. She stood in the dusty post office in May of 1878, her fingers trembling as she read the words again, trying to make sense of how a grown woman of 22 could suddenly become currency. The postmaster looked away, embarrassed, and Natalie folded the paper carefully before walking out into the bright Sierra Nevada sunshine, her whole world crumbling behind her calm exterior. Her father had been a gambler, a dreamer, a man who never met a card game he didn't think he could win. Natalie had known this about him, had watched her mother die of a broken heart when the debts piled higher than their little house in San Francisco could hold. But she had never imagined that his final bet would involve her freedom. The telegram instructed her to travel to a place called Rawlins Station, a nothing town 3 days' ride east, where a man named Gerald Hutchins waited to collect what her father owed him. A daughter for 100 acres of prime grazing land. The math made her sick. She sold everything she owned except for 2 dresses, her mother's wedding ring, and a photograph of her parents on their wedding day. The stage to Rawlins Station cost most of her money, and she spent the journey pressed between a woman with 3 screaming children and a man who smelled like whiskey and horses. The landscape changed as they traveled, the green hills giving way to drier plains, and Natalie watched it all with the detached interest of someone attending their own funeral. Rawlins Station was even smaller than she had imagined, just a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a dried-up creek bed. The stage deposited her in front of a saloon, and the driver pointed to a large man standing on the porch. "That's Hutchins," he said, then drove away before Natalie could ask him to wait, to take her back, to pretend this had all been a terrible mistake. Gerald Hutchins was 50 if he was a day, with a belly that strained his vest buttons and eyes that assessed her like livestock. "You're prettier than I expected," he said by way of greeting. "Your daddy said you were plain." "My father said a lot of things that weren't true," Natalie replied, keeping her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "I assume you have papers proving this arrangement is legal." Hutchins laughed, a wet sound that made her skin crawl. "Legal? Girl, your daddy signed over guardianship before he put a bullet in his head. You're mine now, same as that land was his. We'll be married by Sunday and then you'll earn your keep at my ranch." The world tilted slightly. Suicide. Her father had killed himself rather than face his debts. And now she stood in this forsaken place, about to be married to a man who looked at her like she was property he'd won at auction. Natalie had always considered herself strong, had survived her mother's death and her father's neglect, but this felt like too much. She opened her mouth to refuse, to run, to scream, when a new voice cut through the afternoon heat. "Hutchins, that land's not yours to bargain with." The man who spoke was tall and lean, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of a winter sky. He wore dusty ranch clothes and a gun belt, and he walked with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of. Natalie guessed he was around 27 or 28, young enough to move with grace but old enough to have the weathered look of a man who worked hard under the sun. "Nathan Bryant," Hutchins said, and his voice dripped with contempt. "This ain't your business." "It is when you're trading on land that's got my family's water rights running through it," Nathan replied. He stopped a few feet away, his gaze flicking to Natalie for just a moment before returning to Hutchins. "My father settled that property before Parker ever filed his claim. The deed's no good, which means this whole arrangement is no good." Hutchins's face turned red. "Your father's been dead 10 years. Whatever claim the Bryants had died with him." Filed the paperwork with the territorial office last month, Nathan said calmly. Got the response yesterday. That land reverts to Bryant Holdings due to the water dispute, which means Parker had no right to bet it, and you've got no right to collect on it. Natalie watched this exchange with growing confusion and hope. She didn't understand the legal details, but she understood that this stranger was offering her a way out. Hutchins understood it too, and his hand moved toward the gun at his hip. Nathan's hand moved faster, not drawing but resting on his own weapon in a clear warning. "Don't be stupid, Gerald," Nathan said quietly. "We both know how this ends if you draw on me." For a long moment nobody moved. Then Hutchins spat in the dirt and turned his glare on Natalie. "This isn't over. Your father's debts don't just disappear." "Take it up with the San Francisco probate court," Nathan suggested. "But the girl's not yours to claim." Hutchins stormed off, and Natalie found herself alone with her unexpected savior. Up close, she could see the kindness in Nathan Bryant's eyes, the way he carefully looked away from her as if to give her privacy to compose herself. She realized she was shaking. "Thank you," she managed. "I don't know what just happened, but thank you." "You're welcome," Nathan said. He seemed uncomfortable now, like he hadn't thought through what came after the confrontation. "You got somewhere to stay? Someone waiting for you?" "No," Natalie admitted. "I have about $3 and nowhere to go. The telegram said I had to come here, or they'd have me arrested for my father's debts." Nathan rubbed the back of his neck, thinking. Finally, he said, "There's a boarding house run by Mrs. Chen. She's fair and honest. I can take you there and we can figure out what comes next." "What does come next?" Natalie asked. "If what you said about the land is true, then I'm free." "Just like that." "It's true," Nathan confirmed. "The land your father bet belonged to my family through water rights established in 1852. Even if Parker filed a claim, it doesn't supersede original settlement rights." Hutchins knew it was shaky, but he was hoping nobody would challenge him on it. They walked through the small town together, Natalie carrying her single bag and Nathan leading the way. People watched them with open curiosity, and Natalie felt the weight of small-town gossip settling on her shoulders. Mrs. Chen turned out to be a tiny Chinese woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, but she softened when Nathan explained the situation. "You stay here," Mrs. Chen said to Natalie. "First week is free. After that we talk about work or payment." "I can work," Natalie said quickly. "I can cook, clean, so keep books. Whatever you need." Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. "We talk tomorrow. Tonight you rest." Nathan tipped his hat and turned to leave, but Natalie caught his arm. "Wait, why did you help me? You don't know me." He looked at her for a long moment, and Natalie saw something in his expression that made her breath catch. Not pity, not obligation, but genuine concern. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "And because nobody deserves to be treated like property." After he left, Natalie sat in her small room at the boarding house and cried for the first time since receiving the telegram. She cried for her father's wasted life, for her mother's broken heart, for her own narrow escape. But underneath, the grief was a tiny spark of something else. Gratitude that in this harsh world, there were still men like Nathan Bryant who helped strangers without expecting anything in return. She saw him again 2 days later, when she was helping Mrs. Chen at the general store. Nathan came in to buy supplies, and his face lit up when he saw her. "Miss Parker, you're looking better." "I feel better," Natalie admitted. She did look better too, having slept properly for the first time in weeks and eaten Mrs. Chen's excellent cooking. "Mrs. Chen hired me to help with her businesses. I'm learning I'm apparently good at keeping accounts." "That's wonderful," Nathan said, and he sounded like he meant it. They talked while Mrs. Chen filled his order, easy conversation about the town and the weather and nothing important. But Natalie found herself watching the way his hands moved, strong and careful, and the way his smile reached his eyes when he laughed at something she said. Over the next few weeks, Nathan found reasons to come to town more often than his ranch probably required. He'd stop by the general store or the boarding house, always polite, always respectful, but Natalie could feel the current of something building between them. She learned that he ran his family's cattle ranch alone since his father's death, that he was honest and hardworking and respected in the community. She learned that he loved this hard land with its dry summers and bitter winters, that he dreamed of building something lasting. One evening in late June, Nathan asked if she'd like to go riding. "I want to show you something," he said, "if you're comfortable with that." Natalie had learned to ride as a child back when her family had money and prospects. She borrowed a split skirt from Mrs. Chen and met Nathan at the livery stable, where he helped her onto a gentle mare. They rode out of town as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The land he brought her to was beautiful in its starkness, 100 acres of rolling grassland with a creek running through it and mountains rising in the distance. "This is the disputed property," Nathan said. "The land your father thought he owned." Natalie looked around, trying to imagine what her father had seen in this place. Potential, probably. Wealth. A way out of his debts. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "It belonged to my father," Nathan continued. "He settled here in 1851 before California was barely a state. Built a cabin right there by the creek, ran cattle on these hills. He filed his claim proper, established water rights, did everything legal. Then Parker came along in 1870 and filed an overlapping claim with the territorial office, taking advantage of my father being dead and me being young. I didn't know how to fight it then." "But you fought it now," Natalie said. Nathan nodded. "When I heard Hutchins was trading on Parker's claim, I knew I had to settle it once and for all. Took all my savings to hire a lawyer in Sacramento, but he got the original records. This land is Bryant land, legal and proper." They dismounted and walked along the creek bank, and Nathan talked about his plans for the property. He wanted to expand his herd, build a proper ranch house, maybe even plant some crops if he could get enough water. His passion was evident in every word, and Natalie found herself drawn not just to the man but to his dreams. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked finally. "Why bring me here?" Nathan stopped walking and turned to face her. The setting sun cast shadows across his face, but his eyes were clear and serious. "Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the day you arrived. Because I want to be honest with you about who I am and what I have. And because I want to know if maybe, someday, you might feel something for me too." Natalie's heart hammered in her chest. "Nathan, I barely know you." "I know," he said. "That's why I said someday. I'm not asking for anything right now except the chance to court you proper. To take you to church socials and town dances. To let you see who I really am, and to learn who you are beyond the circumstances that brought you here." She should have said no. She had just escaped one man trying to own her. She shouldn't immediately entangle herself with another. But looking at Nathan, seeing the hope and vulnerability in his expression, Natalie couldn't bring herself to refuse. "I'd like that," she said softly. "I'd like to know you better." His smile could have lit the darkest night. "Then let's start now. Tell me about your life before all this. Tell me who Natalie Parker really is." They sat by the creek as the stars came out, and Natalie talked about her childhood in San Francisco, about her mother's gentle nature and her father's restless spirit. She talked about learning to read and write from a governess they couldn't afford, about dreaming of traveling to places she'd only seen in books. Nathan listened like every word mattered, asking questions that showed he was truly interested in her answers. When he finally rode her back to town, it was late enough that Mrs. Chen was waiting up with a lantern and a knowing smile. "That Bryant boy is a good one," she said after Nathan left. "You could do worse." "I barely know him," Natalie protested, but her heart wasn't in the argument. "You know enough," Mrs. Chen said wisely. "You know he's honorable. You know he's kind. The rest is just details." Throughout July and August, Nathan courted Natalie with an old-fashioned earnestness that made her feel cherished. He took her to Sunday services at the small church, where she met the other ranching families and town residents. He brought her wildflowers picked from the hills around his ranch. He taught her to shoot, saying every woman in this country needed to know how to protect herself, and he was patient when she flinched at the gun's report. Natalie found herself falling for him in increments, small moments that added up to something profound. The way he helped Mrs. Chen carry heavy supplies without being asked. The way he talked to his horse with genuine affection. The way he looked at Natalie like she was the most precious thing in his world. She had never felt this way before, had never known that love could be both gentle and all-consuming. One afternoon in mid-August, Nathan took her back to the disputed property. They had been there several times now, and Natalie had come to love the peaceful isolation of the place. But today, Nathan seemed nervous, fidgeting with his hat as they rode. "I got the final deed from the territorial office yesterday," he said when they reached the creek. "Legal and binding, no more disputes. This land is officially mine." "That's wonderful," Natalie said. "You must be relieved." "I am," Nathan agreed. He dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering on her waist. "Natalie, I need to tell you something. When I challenged Hutchins that day, it wasn't just about the land dispute." "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. "I'd heard about the arrangement. Word travels fast in small towns. I heard Hutchins bragging in the saloon about how he'd gotten himself a pretty young bride as part of a land deal. It made me sick, the idea of anyone being traded like that. So I looked into the deed, and I found the dispute my father had filed years ago. I used it to stop the trade, but Natalie, I need you to know the truth." Natalie felt cold despite the summer heat. What truth? The water rights dispute was real, but it had been settled years ago in a compromise between my father and the territorial office. Parker's claim was actually legitimate, or legitimate enough that it would have stood in court. But I filed new paperwork, dug up old documents, and essentially forced the issue until the territorial office ruled in my favor. I bent the truth to break that contract. She stared at him, trying to process this. So the land was actually my father's to bet. Legally, it was complicated enough that it could have gone either way, Nathan admitted. But I made sure it went my way so that Hutchins couldn't claim you. And then, once I had the deed, I realized I'd done exactly what I was trying to prevent. I'd taken the land that was supposed to be traded for you. I'd just done it in a way that meant you weren't obligated to anyone. Natalie walked away from him, her mind racing. She wasn't angry exactly, but she felt the weight of what he was telling her. He had manipulated the system to save her, which was noble, but he had also essentially taken possession of the very transaction he claimed to oppose. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked. Nathan followed her, stopping a few feet away. "Because I love you and I can't build a life with you on a lie. You deserve to know the whole truth before you decide anything about us." Her breath caught. He loved her. She had suspected, had hoped, but hearing him say it made everything real. "Nathan." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "This is the deed to this property. It's in my name, legal and proper, but I want you to have it." Natalie looked at the document he was holding out to her, confused. "What? I'm giving you the deed," Nathan said. "This land, all 100 acres of it, belongs to you." Not as payment, not as a trade, but as a gift. Because you should have something that's truly yours, something no man can ever take from you or use against you. You can sell it, keep it, do whatever you want with it. It's yours, free and clear. Tears blurred her vision as she took the deed with shaking hands. The paper felt heavy, weighted with meaning beyond its physical substance. A woman owning property was unusual but not impossible, and Nathan was giving her independence, security, freedom. He was giving her the very thing her father had tried to trade her for, asking nothing in return. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you do this?" Nathan stepped closer, cupping her face gently in his calloused hands. "Because I love you, Natalie Parker. I love your strength and your courage and the way you smile when you think nobody's watching. I love how you stood up to Hutchins even though you were terrified. I love the life I imagine when I think about my future, and you're in every part of it. But I never want you to be with me because you feel obligated or because you have no other choice. If you decide to love me back, I want it to be because you choose me, not because I'm your only option." "You're giving me the choice," Natalie said, understanding flooding through her. "You're making sure I'm free to choose." "Yes," Nathan said simply. "You can sell this land and go back to San Francisco. You can homestead it yourself and build your own life. You can do anything you want. And if what you want includes me, then I'll be the happiest man in California. But it has to be your choice." Natalie looked at the deed, then at Nathan, then back at the land stretching around them. She thought about the terrified girl who had stepped off that stage 2 months ago, believing she had no choices and no future. She thought about the woman she had become, the one who kept books for Mrs. Chen and had learned to shoot and had found the courage to imagine happiness again. "I choose you," she said, and watched his face transform with joy. "Nathan Bryant, I choose you and this life and this beautiful harsh land. I choose all of it." He kissed her then, gentle and reverent, and Natalie felt like she was finally home. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling through tears. "Will you marry me?" Nathan asked. "Not because of land or debt or obligation, but because we love each other and want to build a life together." "Yes," Natalie said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you." They were married in September, in the small church with Mrs. Chen and half the town in attendance. Natalie wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, and Nathan wore his Sunday best with his hair finally trimmed. The ceremony was brief, but when they exchanged vows, Natalie felt the truth of every word. She was choosing this man, this life, and she had never been more certain of anything. For their wedding present, Natalie gave Nathan the deed to the property, properly signed over to both their names. "We build this life together," she said. "Equal partners." Nathan had looked at her with such love that she felt it like a physical warmth. "Equal partners," he agreed. They spent their wedding night in the cabin Nathan had built on the disputed land, now legally theirs. It was small but sturdy, with a real bed and a fireplace and windows that looked out over the creek. Nathan carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing at the tradition, and then he set her down gently and kissed her like she was something precious. "Are you happy?" he asked later, as they lay together in the darkness, the sounds of the creek and the night birds drifting through the open window. "Happier than I knew it was possible to be," Natalie answered honestly. 3 months ago, I thought my life was over. Now I have a husband I love, land that's ours, and a future I actually want to see. "We're going to build something amazing here," Nathan said, his voice full of conviction. "A real ranch, a real home. Maybe someday children running through these hills." Natalie smiled in the darkness. "I'd like that. All of it." The first year of their marriage was hard work, but filled with joy. They built a proper ranch house on the property, working side by side to raise the walls and seal the roof. Nathan taught Natalie about cattle ranching, and she surprised them both by taking to it naturally. She learned to rope and brand, to identify sick animals and treat common ailments. She kept the books for the ranch, managing their finances with the same skills she'd shown at Mrs. Chen's store. The town accepted her as Mrs. Bryant, and Natalie found herself making friends among the other ranch wives. She helped organize church socials and quilting bees, and she never forgot where she'd come from or how close she'd come to a very different life. When she heard of other women in difficult circumstances, she quietly helped where she could, using her own experience to guide them toward resources and safety. Hutchins left town the following spring, his reputation ruined after Nathan's legal victory and Natalie's escape. Natalie felt a fierce satisfaction knowing she had helped expose his predatory behavior, potentially saving other women from similar fates. The land he'd tried to claim through her father's debt became a symbol of her freedom instead, acres of possibility where she and Nathan were building their dreams. In the summer of 1879, Natalie realized she was pregnant. She told Nathan one evening as they sat on the porch of their completed ranch house, watching the sunset paint the hills gold. He whooped with joy, lifting her carefully and spinning her around before setting her down and immediately worrying that he'd been too rough. "I'm pregnant, not fragile," Natalie laughed, "although you'll probably drive me crazy with hovering for the next 7 months." "Absolutely," Nathan agreed, grinning. "I'm going to hover and fuss and make sure you don't lift anything heavier than a teacup." "I'm still doing ranch work," Natalie insisted. "Just maybe not the heavy lifting." Their son was born in March of 1880, a healthy baby with Nathan's dark hair and Natalie's stubborn spirit. They named him James, after Nathan's father, and Natalie felt her heart expand with a love she hadn't known existed. Watching Nathan hold their son, seeing the tenderness in his strong hands, she fell in love with her husband all over again. Life settled into a rhythm over the next few years. The ranch prospered, their herd growing and their reputation for quality cattle spreading. Natalie managed the business side while Nathan handled the daily operations, and their partnership proved as strong in work as it was in love. They added rooms to the house, built a proper barn, and hired 2 ranch hands to help with the increased workload. In 1882, they had a daughter they named Sarah, and 2 years later, another son they called Thomas. The house filled with the sounds of children's laughter, and Natalie sometimes had to pinch herself to believe this was her real life. The terrified girl on that stage seemed like a character from someone else's story. She thought about her father sometimes, tried to forgive him for his weaknesses even though his final betrayal still hurt. She thought about her mother, wished she could have lived to see her grandchildren, to know that Natalie had found the happiness and security she'd always wanted for her daughter. And she thought about that telegram, the one that had arrived on a Tuesday morning and changed everything. One evening in the spring of 1885, Natalie and Nathan sat on their porch after putting the children to bed. 7 years had passed since their wedding, and they had built exactly what Nathan had dreamed of that day by the creek. A thriving ranch, a beautiful home, a family full of love. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked suddenly. "Staying here instead of going back to San Francisco, you could have sold the land and had a completely different life." Natalie thought about it, really considered the question. "No," she said finally, "I don't regret it. Maybe I would have built a good life in San Francisco, but it wouldn't have been this life. It wouldn't have been you and our children and these hills. I wouldn't trade this for anything." Nathan took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I think about that day constantly. What if I hadn't heard about Hutchins's arrangement? What if I hadn't found the legal angle to challenge the deed? What if you'd stepped off that stage and I'd been too late?" But you weren't too late, Natalie said. You were exactly on time. And you didn't just save me, Nathan. You gave me the freedom to choose my own life. That gift was worth more than all the land in California. You gave me everything, Nathan replied. A partner, a family, a reason to build something that lasts. I was just a lonely rancher before you. Now I'm the luckiest man alive. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge over the mountains. Inside the house, their children slept safely. Around them, their land stretched into the darkness. Acres of possibility they had transformed together into something real and lasting. And in her pocket, Natalie still carried the original deed, the one Nathan had given her that day by the creek. She didn't need it for legal purposes anymore. Their property was in both their names now, but she kept it as a reminder. She had been bartered for a plot of land, traded like property by a desperate man. But the cowboy who challenged that transaction had done something unexpected and transformative. He had claimed both the land and her freedom, then given her the deed to choose her own future. And she had chosen love, partnership, and a life beyond anything she could have imagined in those dark days before arriving in Rawlins Station. "Tell me what you're thinking," Nathan said, noticing her distant expression. "I'm thinking about beginnings," Natalie said. "About how sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best. I'm thinking about how lucky we are, how much we've built together, and how much I love you." Nathan pulled her close, kissing her temple. "I love you too. More every day if that's possible." "It's possible," Natalie assured him. "I know it is because I feel the same way." As summer arrived, bringing longer days and harder work, Natalie threw herself into the ranch operations with renewed energy. She had been talking with some of the other ranch wives about starting a women's property rights group, helping other women understand their legal options when it came to land ownership and inheritance. Her own experience had taught her how vulnerable women could be, and she wanted to use her knowledge to help others. Nathan supported this completely, even offering their ranch house for meetings. The group started small, just 5 women gathering once a month to discuss legal matters and share information. But word spread, and within a year, they had 15 regular members and had successfully helped 3 women secure property rights that their male relatives had tried to deny them. Natalie found deep satisfaction in this work. Every woman she helped felt like a small victory against the system that had almost destroyed her own life. She never told them the full details of her own story, but she let them know she understood what it meant to be treated as property, and she would fight alongside them for their rights and dignity. The children grew, James becoming a serious boy who loved working alongside his father, Sarah developing her mother's head for numbers and business, and Thomas showing signs of being the family's artist, always drawing the ranch and the animals and the mountains in the distance. Nathan and Natalie watched their children with pride, knowing they were raising them in an environment of love and respect. In the fall of 1887, nearly 10 years after that fateful telegram, Natalie received a letter from a lawyer in San Francisco. Her father's estate, such as it was, had finally been settled. There were no assets, no inheritance, just a letter her father had written before his death. The lawyer had found it while closing out the probate case and thought Natalie might want to see it. She debated throwing it away unread. What could her father possibly say that would matter now? But curiosity won, and she opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The letter was short, written in her father's shaky handwriting. "Natalie, by the time you read this, you'll know what I've done. I don't expect forgiveness, don't deserve it. I told myself I was solving my problems, but I was just running from them like I always did. Your mother deserved better than me. You deserve better than me. I'm a coward and a fool, and I've failed you both. I'm sorry. I hope somehow you find a life worth living. Your father, Charles. Natalie read it twice, then set it aside and wiped her eyes. The letter didn't change anything, didn't undo the harm her father had caused. But it did give her a small measure of peace, knowing he had at least recognized his failures, even if he'd been too broken to fix them. That evening she showed the letter to Nathan. He read it silently, then pulled her into his arms. "Are you all right?" "I think so," Natalie said. "It's sad, knowing he was so lost, but it also makes me grateful for everything we have. He couldn't face his problems, but we've faced ours together. We've built something real and good, and our children will never know what it's like to be used or traded or treated as anything less than precious." "Never," Nathan agreed fiercely. "We're breaking those cycles. Our children will know their worth, and they'll know love isn't about ownership or obligation. It's about partnership and choice and showing up every day for the people who matter." Natalie burned the letter that night in their fireplace, letting go of the last piece of bitterness she carried toward her father. She had wasted enough years of her life being angry at him. Now she wanted to focus on gratitude for everything she had. The ranch continued to thrive through the late 1880s. They added more cattle, improved their breeding stock, and began experimenting with some crop farming on the more fertile sections of the property. Nathan's instincts about the land proved correct. It was excellent grazing territory, and their cattle commanded premium prices in the San Francisco markets. In 1889, they built a new barn and hired 3 more ranch hands to help manage the expanded operations. The Bryant Ranch had become one of the most successful in the region, and people came from neighboring counties to buy their cattle and learn their methods. Nathan always credited Natalie's business acumen for their success, while Natalie insisted it was Nathan's dedication and hard work. The truth was they succeeded because they worked as a team, each bringing their strengths to the partnership. Their children grew into capable young people. James, at 10, could already handle many ranch tasks independently. Sarah, at 7, was learning to keep the ranch books under her mother's guidance. And Thomas, at 5, was still young but showed the same determination as his siblings. They were good children, loving and respectful, and Nathan and Natalie took quiet pride in the family they had created. One afternoon in the summer of 1890, Natalie was in town buying supplies when she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. 2 men were discussing a young woman whose father had gambled away his farm and was planning to settle the debt by marrying her to a much older man. The situation was horrifyingly familiar. Natalie didn't hesitate. She approached the men and asked for details. They were surprised but willing to talk, and she learned the girl was 16, the father was desperate, and the marriage was set for the following week. That evening she told Nathan what she'd heard. "We have to help her," Natalie said. "I can't let another girl go through what almost happened to me." Nathan nodded immediately. "What do you need me to do?" Together, they formulated a plan. Nathan would approach the father and offer to buy the farm outright, paying off the gambling debt in exchange for clear title to the property. Meanwhile, Natalie would talk to the girl and make sure she understood she had options. It was risky, inserting themselves into someone else's business, but neither of them could stand by and do nothing. The father, desperate and ashamed, accepted Nathan's offer. The gambler was paid off and the farm became Bryant property, but Nathan didn't keep it. Instead, he had the deed transferred to the 16-year-old girl, making her a property owner in her own right. "Sell it or work it, your choice," Nathan told her. "But it's yours, and nobody can ever use it against you." The girl, whose name was Emma, chose to sell the property and use the money to attend a teacher's college in Sacramento. Before she left, she came to the ranch to thank Natalie and Nathan. "You saved my life," she said simply. "I'll never forget what you did for me." "Just pay it forward," Natalie said. "Help someone else when you can. That's how we change things." That rescue became the template for several others over the years. Whenever Natalie heard of women or girls in vulnerable situations, she and Nathan found ways to help. They bought properties to prevent forced marriages, provided loans to women starting businesses, and offered jobs on their ranch to those who needed fresh starts. It cost them money and time, but neither of them regretted a penny of it. "This is part of our legacy," Nathan said once, after they'd helped a widow keep her late husband's farm when his brothers tried to claim it. "Not just the ranch we build, but the lives we touch. That matters just as much as acres and cattle." Natalie agreed completely. The land that had almost been her prison had become the foundation for her freedom and the means to help others find theirs. There was a beautiful symmetry in that, a sense of justice that satisfied something deep in her soul. As the years passed, their marriage deepened in ways Natalie hadn't known were possible. She and Nathan grew from passionate newlyweds to comfortable partners who could communicate with a glance. They weathered hard times together, including a drought in 1892 that tested their ranch's resources, and a difficult winter in 1894 that took a toll on their herd. But they faced every challenge as a team, and their bond only strengthened through adversity. In the spring of 1895, they celebrated 17 years of marriage with a big party on the ranch. Friends and neighbors came from miles around, and the house filled with music and laughter. Their children, now teenagers and near teenagers, helped host and clearly enjoyed showing off the ranch they'd grown up on. As Natalie watched Nathan dance with Sarah, his face full of love and pride, she felt overwhelming gratitude for the life they'd built. She thought about that scared girl on the stage, the one who thought she had no choices and no future. She wished she could reach back through time and tell that girl everything would be all right. That rescue was coming in the form of a cowboy with honor and a heart big enough to give away land for the sake of love. "Mother, are you crying?" James asked, coming to stand beside her. "Happy tears," Natalie assured him. "I'm just thinking about how lucky we are, how much we have to be grateful for." "Father says you saved each other," James said. "He told me the story once about how you came to Rawlins Station and how he challenged your father's debt. He said it was the best day of his life because he met you." Natalie smiled through her tears. "It was the best day of my life too, even though I didn't know it then. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes if we're brave enough to see them through." As the party continued around them, Natalie found Nathan and pulled him away from the crowd for a moment. "I love you," she said simply. "I need you to know that every day for the rest of our lives. I will be grateful you were brave enough to challenge Hutchins and generous enough to give me a choice." Nathan cupped her face in his hands, the same gesture he'd used that day by the creek 17 years ago. "And I will be grateful every day that you chose me. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie Bryant. You and our children and this life we've built together." They kissed while their children pretended not to watch and their friends smiled knowingly. After 17 years of marriage, Natalie and Nathan were still clearly, deeply in love, and everyone who knew them could see it. The years continued to pass in the rhythm of ranch life. Spring calving, summer grazing, fall roundups, winter preparations. Their children grew into young adults with lives and dreams of their own. James wanted to expand the ranch even further, already planning improvements and investments. Sarah talked about studying law, inspired by her mother's property rights work. Thomas wanted to document the West through art, preserving the landscapes and people before they changed forever. Natalie and Nathan supported all these dreams, knowing their children had the foundation to pursue whatever futures they chose. They had raised them with love and security, teaching them that their worth came from who they were, not what they owned. It was the opposite of how Natalie had been raised, and she took deep satisfaction in breaking those destructive patterns. In 1898, they celebrated 20 years of marriage with a quiet dinner at home, just the two of them. The children were old enough now to manage the ranch for an evening, and Nathan had cooked Natalie's favorite meal himself. They ate by candlelight and talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in the way only long married couples could be. 20 years, Nathan marveled. It feels like yesterday and forever at the same time. I know exactly what you mean, Natalie said. Some days, I still can't believe this is my life. That I get to wake up next to you every morning, that we built all of this together, that we have 3 incredible children who are growing into amazing adults. You ever think about what would have happened if things had gone differently? Nathan asked. If Hutchins had succeeded in claiming you, Natalie shuddered. Sometimes in nightmares. But then I wake up and you're there and I remember I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm free. You gave me all of that, Nathan. We gave it to each other, Nathan corrected. You could have taken that deed and left, started over somewhere far from here. But you chose to stay to build this life with me. That was your gift to me. They went outside after dinner, walking hand in hand through the ranch that had become their kingdom. The original cabin where they'd spent their wedding night still stood by the creek, maintained now as a guest house, but full of memories. The main house sprawled nearby, much larger and grander than either of them had imagined when they'd started building it. Barns and corrals spread across the property, filled with the sounds and smells of their thriving cattle operation. This is what we did, Natalie said, gesturing to encompass it all. This is what we built from that terrible beginning, a place of safety and love and possibility. Our legacy, Nathan agreed. For our children and their children, for every person we've helped along the way. This land that almost destroyed you became the foundation for so much good. That's not accident or luck, Natalie. That's us choosing to create something better. They stood together in the gathering darkness, 2 people who had found each other at the worst possible moment and transformed it into a lifetime of love. Natalie leaned against Nathan's solid warmth and felt contentment settle over her like a blanket. I would choose you again, she said softly. In every lifetime, in every circumstance, I would choose you. And I would move heaven and earth to find you, Nathan replied. Every single time. As the new century approached, they made plans for the future. The ranch would eventually pass to James, with provisions for Sarah and Thomas to share in the profits. The property rights group Natalie had started was now a formal organization with chapters in 3 counties. They had helped over 50 women secure land rights, fair divorces, or escape dangerous situations. It was work Natalie was immensely proud of, knowing she'd turned her trauma into a tool for helping others. In the spring of 1900, they attended the wedding of Emma, the girl they'd saved from a forced marriage 10 years earlier. She had become a teacher as planned and was marrying a fellow educator, a kind man her own age who clearly adored her. At the reception, Emma gave a toast thanking Natalie and Nathan for giving her the freedom to choose her own path. 10 years ago, I thought my life was over, Emma said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. But 2 people I barely knew stepped in and gave me options when I had none. They taught me that property doesn't define worth, that love should be a choice, and that we all have the power to help each other. I teach those lessons to my students now, and I'll teach them to my children someday. Mr. and Mrs. Bryant, you didn't just save me, you showed me how to live. Natalie couldn't stop crying during the speech, and Nathan had to hold her hand tightly to keep his own emotions in check. This was why they'd done it all, why they'd worked so hard and helped so many people. Because lives mattered, because everyone deserved the chance to choose their own future, and because love was the most powerful force for change in the world. As they grew older together, Natalie and Nathan settled into the comfortable rhythm of a marriage built on mutual respect and deep affection. They still worked the ranch, though they let their children and hired hands take on more of the physical labor. They spent evenings on their porch, watching sunsets and talking about their days, finding joy in the simple pleasure of each other's company. Their grandchildren started arriving in the early 1900s, James having married a neighboring rancher's daughter and started a family. Natalie loved being a grandmother, loved watching Nathan play with the babies and tell them stories. She saw the cycle continuing, the next generation being raised with love and security, and it filled her heart to overflowing. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1903, Nathan surprised Natalie with a trip to San Francisco. They stayed in a nice hotel, saw theater performances, and ate in fancy restaurants. But what mattered most to Natalie was walking through her old neighborhood with Nathan, showing him where she'd grown up, the house where her mother had died, the church where her father should have found help but didn't. "This is where I came from," she told Nathan, "but it's not who I am anymore. You helped me become someone new, someone stronger and happier than I ever could have been if I'd stayed here." "You were always strong," Nathan disagreed. "I just gave you the space to realize it. Everything you've accomplished, every life you've touched, that's all you, Natalie. I'm just lucky I got to be part of your journey." They returned to the ranch refreshed and recommitted to the life they'd built. The years continued their steady march forward, bringing changes and challenges but also joy and growth. Their children thrived, their grandchildren multiplied, and the ranch remained a beacon of success and stability in the region. In 1908, on their 30th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party that brought together everyone whose lives they'd touched over the decades. Women Natalie had helped, families Nathan had employed, neighbors they'd supported through hard times. The outpouring of love and gratitude was almost overwhelming. 30 years, Natalie said during her speech, looking at Nathan with eyes that still sparkled with love. 30 years ago, I stepped off a stage in Rawlins Station, believing my life was over. I had been bartered for a plot of land, treated as property to settle a debt. But then, a cowboy challenged that arrangement. He took the land through legal maneuvering, but instead of claiming me along with it, he gave me the deed. He gave me the power to choose my own future. And I chose him, this life, all of you. It was the best choice I ever made. Nathan stood and joined her, wrapping his arm around her waist. "I saw a woman who deserved better than the hand she'd been dealt," he said. "So I did what I could to change the game, but everything that came after, that was us building together. Natalie, you made me believe in partnership, in the power of two people working toward a common dream. You made me a better man, a better father, a better rancher. These 30 years have been the greatest gift of my life." They kissed to thunderous applause, and Natalie felt the same flutter in her stomach she'd felt the first time he'd kissed her by the creek all those years ago. Love, she had learned, didn't fade with time. It deepened, matured, became something richer and more complex than the initial passion. She loved Nathan more at 52 than she had at 22, because now she knew every facet of him, every strength and weakness, and she chose him still. As they moved into their later years, Natalie and Nathan gradually handed over the ranch operations to James and his family. They remained involved, offering advice and helping with major decisions, but they also finally had time to simply enjoy each other's company. They took trips, visited friends, and spent long afternoons doing nothing more ambitious than sitting together and talking. "We did good, didn't we?" Nathan asked one evening as they watched their grandchildren play in the yard. "We did great," Natalie corrected. "We took something terrible and turned it into something beautiful. We helped people, raised good children, built a legacy that will outlast us. Not bad for a scared girl and a cowboy with a conscience." Nathan laughed, the sound warm and familiar. "Not bad at all." On a warm spring day in 1912, Natalie and Nathan celebrated their 34th wedding anniversary by riding out to the original property, the 100 acres that had started it all. The cabin still stood, weathered but sturdy, and the creek still ran clear and cold. They sat on the bank where Nathan had first told her he loved her, where he'd given her the deed that changed her life. "You remember what you said to me that day?" Natalie asked. "You said you wanted me to choose you, not need you. That distinction changed everything for me." "I meant every word," Nathan said. "And you've chosen me every day since then, just like I've chosen you. That's what marriage is, isn't it? Choosing each other over and over, even when it's hard, even when life throws challenges at us." "Especially then," Natalie agreed. She pulled out the original deed from her pocket, the paper now yellowed and fragile. She'd carried it for 34 years, a reminder of the day her life truly began. "I want to do something with this." "What?" Nathan asked. "I want to donate it to the Women's Property Rights Organization," Natalie said. "Frame it, put it in their office, use it to inspire other women. Let them see that change is possible, that they can own their own futures. This piece of paper represents freedom, and I wanted to give hope to women who feel as trapped as I once did." Nathan's eyes misted over. "That's perfect. Your father tried to use that land to trade you away, but instead it became a symbol of liberation. I can't think of a better use for it." They donated the deed the following week, and it became the centerpiece of the organization's office. Women came from all over to see it, to hear Natalie's story, to understand that they too could claim their own power. The organization continued to grow, eventually becoming a statewide network that helped hundreds of women secure their rights and safety. The years passed gently for Natalie and Nathan, filled with family gatherings and quiet contentment. They watched their grandchildren grow into adults, saw James expand the ranch to over 500 acres, celebrated Sarah opening her law practice, and attended Thomas's first art exhibition in Sacramento. Every milestone filled them with pride, knowing they had been the foundation upon which all of this was built. In the summer of 1915, on their 37th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in the same church where they'd married. All 3 of their children were there with their families, along with dozens of friends and community members. Natalie wore a new white dress, and Nathan wore his best suit, and they promised each other the same things they had 37 years earlier: love, partnership, and unwavering commitment. "37 years ago, you gave me freedom," Natalie said during the ceremony. "Every day since then, you've given me love. Nathan Bryant, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will choose you in every lifetime." 37 years ago, you gave me purpose," Nathan replied. "Every day since then, you've given me joy. Natalie Bryant, you made my life complete, and I will find you in every lifetime." As they lived into their 60s, they slowed down physically but remained sharp mentally. They spent their days managing their investments, helping with the grandchildren, and working with the various charitable organizations they'd supported over the years. The ranch remained successful under James's management, and their other children's careers flourished. They had built something that would last long after they were gone. One evening in early 1918, as they sat on their porch watching yet another sunset, Natalie turned to Nathan and said, "I need you to know something. If I could go back and change everything, prevent my father's gambling, avoid all that pain and fear, I wouldn't do it, because it led me here to you, to this life. I wouldn't trade a single moment of what we've built together." Nathan took her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "Neither would I. Every hard thing we faced made us stronger. Every challenge we overcame together brought us closer. I look at our life and I see nothing but blessings." "We're lucky," Natalie said. "Lucky we found each other. Lucky we had the courage to build something real. Lucky we've been given so many years together." "The luckiest," Nathan agreed. They lived to see the end of World War I, celebrated James's success in modernizing the ranch with new techniques and equipment, and welcomed great-grandchildren into the world. Their love story became legendary in the community, the tale of how a cowboy saved a woman from a terrible fate, and they built an empire of love and land together. On their 50th wedding anniversary in 1928, the whole county seemed to turn out for the celebration. The governor sent a letter of congratulations. The property rights organization presented them with an award for their decades of service. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren filled the ranch house to overflowing. Natalie, now 72, stood before the crowd with Nathan beside her. "50 years ago I was bartered for a plot of land," she said, her voice still strong and clear. "A cowboy took both the land and me, but instead of keeping me as property, he gave me the deed. He gave me the power to choose my own life. I chose him, and it was the best decision I ever made. These 50 years have been filled with more love, more joy, more purpose than I ever dreamed possible. Nathan Bryant, thank you for seeing me as a person worth saving. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me. Thank you for 50 years of choosing me." Nathan stood and kissed her, and the crowd erupted in applause. "Thank you for 50 years of choosing me back," he said simply. "You're still the best thing that ever happened to me." As they moved into their 70s, Natalie and Nathan remained active and engaged with life. They walked the ranch every day, visited with friends and family, and continued to support the causes they cared about. They had lived long, full lives, and they treasured every remaining moment together. On a quiet morning in the spring of 1930, Natalie woke up in the bed she'd shared with Nathan for over 50 years and felt a deep sense of peace. She looked at her husband sleeping beside her, his hair now white but his face still dear and familiar, and she felt overwhelming gratitude for the life they'd lived together. They had started with nothing but a legal loophole and mutual attraction. They had built an empire of love, family, land, and legacy. They had helped countless people, raised amazing children, and shown the world what partnership could accomplish. Natalie had been bartered for a plot of land, treated as property by a desperate father. But a cowboy with honor and heart had challenged that arrangement, taking both the land and her freedom, and then giving her the power to choose her own future. She had chosen love, and that choice had made all the difference. As the morning sun streamed through their bedroom window, Nathan woke and smiled at her, the same smile that had captured her heart 52 years ago. "Good morning, my love," he said, as he did every morning. "Good morning," Natalie replied, as she always did. And in that simple exchange was everything that mattered: love, commitment, partnership, and the knowledge that they had built something beautiful together that would outlast them both. Their story would be told for generations, a reminder that even the darkest beginnings could lead to the most beautiful endings, if two people were brave enough to choose each other and build a life on that foundation of love.